This week is Parshas Kedoshim. Right, 2 years out of 3, Kedoshim goes together with Achei. It's one shir for 2 Parshas. But this year, because it's an Ibayah, we got 2 shirim for Achei Kedoshim. Last week we did Azazel. And this week is Kedoshim. Kedoshim is one of the shortest Parshas in the Chumash. I think it's 64 psukim. It's a small little Parsha. Achei is 80. So when Kedoshim and Achei are together, it's 144 psukim. In other words, it's like a regular size of a parsha in Bereshis together, combined. It's a short parsha, Kedoshim. But Kedoshim is a chock full of mitzvahs. It's gepackt mit mitzvahs. In these 64 psukim, I'm not going to say you have 64 mitzvahs, but you probably have 40. If you're familiar with the Chumash, there's 613 mitzvahs. In Shoftim and Kiteitzei, each parsha has like 50 or 60 or 70 mitzvahs. Incredible numbers of mitzvahs in those parshas. Aside from that, one of the most rich parshas and mitzvahs is Kedoshim. There's many. In one pasuk you can have 3 mitzvahs. Of the judgement of the Ramah, of the Tayag mitzvahs. It's full of mitzvahs. Kedoshim is full of mitzvahs. RaShI says a very unusual thing, which really deserves analysis. One day I'll give a shir on it, but it's on my list of the to-do, but I didn't do it this year. RaShI says, Parshazu nemra b'hakel. Parshas Kedoshim was said on an occasion of hakel. What does hakel mean? What is the definition of the word hakel? Men, women, and children. Hakel means you even bring people who can't understand what you're saying to the occasion, even newborn babies. Because hakel means you get the people together not so much to teach them Torah, but to inspire in them a fear of heaven. RaShI says, Parshazu nema b'hakel. Parshas Kedoshim was said in hakel, which is why there are so many mitzvahs. So when you look at a parsha like this, 2 things happen. A, you have so many choices. There's a certain feeling of disappointment, because you say to yourself, if I live 100 years, I'm not going to get through every... How many shiurim could you give Parshas Kedoshim? Every 3 words there's another shir. So you almost feel like you'll never finish. And then, of course, the second question is, so what am I going to pick? And I chose a topic which maybe you wouldn't think of originally, but once you hear it, of course, it's a very good topic. By the way, I did already. The most famous pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, you can go to the website inside Hasidus. I have a class of which I gave years ago, which is with text and with quotes, whatever. What mitzvah am I choosing to talk about? Lashon HaRa. Leiseilech Rachel ba'amecha. It's a pasuk in our parsha. The pasuk says, and I read, Leiseilech Rachel ba'amecha. Do not go as a Rachel. Rachel, I guess, is best translated as a yente, as a gossipist. Ba'amecha, amongst your people. Leisamed al dam re'acha. Do not stand silently as your brother's blood spills. And the pasuk finishes, Ani Hashem, I am God. RaShI says a rule. In Parshas Kedoshim, the words Ani Hashem v'yarei samei alekecha appear very often, because there are mitzvahs that are dvarim hamesurim lalev. There are many mitzvahs in this week's parsha that whether a person is doing the right thing or the wrong thing is in their mind. You can't know for sure. Like lifnei ivel eisiten michshel v'yarei samei alekecha. It's not a parsha, right? Do not put a stumble. You go over to a guy and say, I heard there's a good stock. You can buy it at a discount, and they're saying it's going to go up. And of course, you own that business. And you go to your friends and you tell them it's a good stock. They don't know that it's your business. They invest a lot of money. The stock drops, and then you profit. That's called, you're tricking him. So the pasuk says, if to be afraid of Hashem, because only Hashem knows, is a similar thing. Do not stand and watch your brother's blood be spilled. RaShI says, not like RaShI, but in any case, this is the topic for tonight. Do not go as a Rachel amongst your people. In Mitzvah Hashem, what I'm really intent on getting to tonight, what I really want to do is the RaMbaM in Hilchas Deis. The RaMbaM has 6 halachas on Lashon HaRa. The mitzvah of Lashon HaRa, the RaMbaM dedicates 6 passages to 6 paragraphs. And I want to review those with you, and in reviewing those, you'll see how the RaMbaM understands the pasuk. What is the meaning of the word Rachil? Lo yisei lech Rachel, do not walk Rachel. Reish Chaf Yud Lamed. What does the Reish Chaf Yud Lamed sound like? Rashi says that in Aramaic, a Chaf and a Gimel are exchanged. Lo yisei lech Rachel is lo yisei lech Rogil. Do not walk around from person to person, collecting information over here and carrying it over there. That's how Rashi interprets the word lo yisei lech Rachel. The word for a gente, for a gossipist, for a Mesaper Lashon HaRa, is a Rachil, Reish Chaf Yud Lamed, or Rechilus. You'll see as this class unfolds the details that revolve around it. Let me just give you one of my favorite quotes. I heard this from a very wise man 35 years ago, a very long time ago, and I've repeated it many times since. I've been given credit for the quote, but I'm just repeating what I heard from another. It's mamish a gavaldike quote. This quote you could live your whole life with. You could live your whole life around this quote. There's three kinds of people. There's great people, and there's average people, and there's low people. Great people discuss ideas. Average people discuss things, cars, food, clothing. Low people discuss people. That's the Seder Eliyahu Rabba. Before you get into the particular halacha, a deeper person talks about ideas. Ordinary people talk about things. Nidrika b'shefinish, low people sit and talk about people, even if it's just tama zegeret. Sometimes you sit at a Friday night meal and you'll have a conversation. By the time you're up to leave the meal, you feel so dirty, you want to take a shower. You just spent an hour and a half talking about people. Gerard Vega mentioned it's a very engaging activity, but it doesn't speak well of us as human beings to sit and talk about one another. And in a very, very broad sense, that's what the Torah says, Lo yisachel rachel, don't be a yente. Don't be one of those people who walks around along talking about other people. There's a lot of details to this, which I'm going to get to in Mitzvah Hashem later. Now I have a bunch of information. First of all, I have Midrashim, halachic Midrashim, the Safra, and the Gemara Pesachim. They say that Lo yisei lech rachel is a din in Sanhedrin. Lo yisei lech rachel is a law in a court. And they translate the word Rachel as Rach and Kosha. I don't know how they get that out. The Toras Kohanim says these words: Lo yitiyeh rach lazev kosha lazev. If you're a judge and you're presiding over a case, and there's two people, you're not allowed to treat them differently. You're not allowed to be nice to one and tough on the other. Lo yitei lech rachel b'amecha means if you're a dayan and you're overseeing a court case, you can be mean to both of them, you can be nice to both of them, but you can't be one way to one and another way to another. That's what the Toras Kohanim says. Alternatively, he says, if you sat on a court of law, and how does a court of law work? You have a bezdin, depending on the case. You have 3 judges, or 11 judges, or 23 judges, or 71 judges, depending on the case. And of course, after the case is judged, the balei din, the two people involved in the court case, the plaintiff and what's the other word? And the defendant go out, and the judges have a chance to talk it over, and when they have a verdict, and they count the majority, they call the people in and tell the people the verdict. So one of the ways that the Toras Kohanim explains what the Seder Eliyahu Rabba means, if a case was tried, and you were found guilty or not guilty, you were found right, vindicated or not vindicated, you're not allowed to go later to one of the two tzadim and say, I really voted with you, but I was outvoted. That's what the Seder Eliyahu Rabba. That's a form of gossip. But the Toras Kohanim associates the Seder Eliyahu Rabba to the category of judgment and court. The simple reason the Toras Kohanim does is because of the pasuk before. The pasuk before says, Leisasu avol b'mishpat, you're not allowed to be unfair in judgment. Leisisa pnei dal, do not be especially nice to poor people. Leised pnei gadol, do not be especially nice to powerful people. B'tzedek tish. There's 2 points of view. One, you see, I got rachmanas on the guy, so you make him win even when he lost. Or the guy's very powerful, you make him win even though he's the loser. You tell him later, you really lost, I just didn't want to embarrass you. You're not allowed to do that. B'tzedek, so those are 4 dinim in the pasuk before, all about a court case. So therefore the Toras Kohanim starts the next pasuk, Lo yitei lech rachel, and he presumes there is halachas in dayonim. Either you're not allowed to be hard on one and soft to the other, or you're not allowed to go around after the case is settled and go over to the guy who won or lost and say, I really voted with you, but I was outvoted. The Gemarah in Masechta Pesachim gives a very, very unusual scenario for Leisei Lechrachel. There's a halacha in Torah which says that you're not allowed to punish a person if you have only one witness. Right? In order to punish a person, you have to have two witnesses. The only thing that one witness is good enough for is in dinim aminis. If it comes to business, if you have one witness, you can make the guy swear. It could be it's a shvur de'erais. So let's say you're one witness, and you saw one person hurt another. If you come and testify, what's going to happen? Nothing is going to happen. But you make the guy look bad. So the Gemarah says in Pesachim, that's Leisei Lechrachel. If you cannot find a second witness who saw what you saw, that you can go into the court together, and that your testimony will prosecute, will result in a real outcome, just to go in by yourself to the court of law and testify, knowing that nothing is going to happen from it except that you're going to embarrass somebody, says the Leitei Lechrachel. Says the Gemara Pesachim. Leitei Lechrachel ba'amecha means that if you're an Eid Echad and you're a witness about something that's not about a financial consideration, where there's not going to be a shua, if you come as a one witness and testify, all you're doing is embarrassing another human being, because nothing practical, nothing actionable is going to come from it. Says the Gemarah, that's b'chlal d'olav leitei lechrachel. But again, according to this Gemarah in Pesachim, like the Toras Kohanim, leitei lechrachel is a din in dayonim. It's a din in courts. Okay? Now, besides, there's a sefer called Seder Eliyahu Rabba, which is a Midrash, because it's found in Torah Shlema. It's not the Eliyahu Rabba in Shulchan Aruch. Seder Eliyahu Rabba is a Midrash of some sort. I guess it's Seder Eliyahu Rabba. Maybe I don't understand what it is. Seder Eliyahu Rabba, he connects Leisei Lechrachel to what's called in halacha Ona'as Devarim. This is a conversation for another time. I don't know if I ever gave you a class on Ona'ah. In Parshas Bahar, you have dinim of Ona'ah. Ona'ah technically means interest. Technically means inflation. Inflation. The halach is if you're buying and selling, you can be a markup, right? You're allowed to profit. But according to Shulchan Aruch, according to the Torah, the margin of profit is not allowed to be more than 1/6. If it's cost $100, you can only charge $120. Which is 1/5 added on, it's a 1/6. If you charge more than a 1/6, so it doesn't go bittul mekach. This buyer can give it, say, I want my money back. It's called Ona'ah. And the halachas of Ona'ah in Parshas Bahar. In our Parsha, you have lo yisoinu ishas amisei, and Rashi says Ona'as Devarim. This is the Gemara Mesechta Bab Metzia. Ona'as Devarim means that just like I'm not allowed to overcharge financially, I'm not allowed to overcharge emotionally. If you say something to another person which is embarrassing to that person, so there's a lot of halbonas upon him, you're not allowed to embarrass your friend. But there's also a din of Ona'as Devarim. Ona'as Devarim means if I use my words to embarrass you by exposing your vulnerability, your weakness. Like if you go to a Baal Tshuva and say, I remember you used to be kach v'kach. Or you go over to a Ger Tzedek, to a righteous convert, and say, I remember how you looked yesterday and before. So the Midrash Eliyahu Rabba says, what is the gedder of Leisei Lechrachel? He brings two pshatim. The second pshat that he brings is, basically, you're not allowed to go around to people and tell them to their face things which embarrass them. Not like Leisei Lechrachel means I'm not allowed to go to you and tell them about him, or I'm not allowed to him and tell them about him. I'm not allowed to go over to you and say something to you, even if it's private, that's embarrassing to you. He holds that that's included in the din of the lav of Leisei Lechrachel. He brings an alternative pshat that you shouldn't be. Some people know how to talk. Leisei Lechrachel, he says something for rach v'kosher. You talk very sweet. Your words are very, very sweet and soft, and they're daggers. Some people can do that. They can say something to you with a very nice tone of voice, and they're putting a knife in you. Leisei Lechrachel means don't be rach beficha and kosher bilvavcha. It's similar to what the Toras Kohanim said. Don't speak soft words and your kavanah is cruel. You're not allowed to do that.
Why isn't that included in the later part?
Which one? The Torah say Ich weiß nicht. I just made a collection of different Mefarshim. I have avoided the kasha by telling you that it says later. No, that's why I pointed it out. I don't know. Then there's a Midrashim that link Leitelech Rachil to Le'sam Adam Ra'echa. That it's possible that by either speaking you cause a person to get killed, or by keeping quiet you cause a person to get killed. Le'seilech Rachil Ba'mecha Le'sam Adam Ra'echa without a vav. In other words, they hold that it's not two separate lavim. Le'teilech Rachil Ba'mecha Le'sam Adam Ra'echa. Do not be a person who's a Rachil, who uses his mouth in a way that causes another person to die, which can mean one of two things. A, if you would speak, you could save a life, and you keep quiet. That's leitelech rachel b'merachel tamud amriyach. Or B, by you speaking, you kill a life, you take a life. That's also included in leitelech rachel b'merachel tamud amriyach. That
you're a witness to something that was only dead.
so then you have din, you have a chiyuv, as an edus. We're speaking stam azoi to be a peddler of information which could be hurtful to other people, just for the sake of hurting them. This is not allowed. Look, this is the Midrash, this is the Chazal of Leitelech Rachel. What does RaShI say? What does RaShI tell Leitelech Rachel? Leitelech Rachel means don't be a peddler of gossip, basically. I told you before, the word Rachel and the word Rogil. You go into his house, you hang around, you see what's going on, you go in and say, next door, the Mr. and the Mrs., they fight a lot. Really? Everyone thinks they're a great job. Well, listen, I don't mean to pass along bad news. I just spent a lot of time in the house, and then you spend time in the other house, and you go to the third house, and you invite the people who carry information from person to person. It's called the meragel, like a spy. But you're not a spy in the sense that you're tricking people. You're just a peddler of gossip. You go from house to house, you go from place to place, and you pass along bad news. That's considered a midah, it's a lav. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to go peddle gossip. In other words, if I have information about you, whatever information it is, just simply going and repeating that information to other people is considered a yente, right, in society. And in Torah it's called a meragel, a rechilus. And you're not allowed to carry information from one person to another person simply because you have it, and it makes you look good. You become the center of the yente group who sit around on street corners talk about people. You're not allowed to do that. But then RaShI brings something else, which is the Targum. And the Targum sparks a very, very big controversy. The Targum Uncle says, Leitechel kurzen v'yamoch. What's the difference between leitelech and leitechel? Leitelech means don't walk. Leitechel means don't eat. There's no connection at all. Leiselech rachel means do not walk. The Targum translates leiselech, leitechel, don't eat. Okay, now I don't know how many of you know the Gemarah Masechta Gittin. You heard the story of Kamsa bar Kamsa? Yeah. Where there was a man who made a party, and Kamsa was his friend, and Bar Kamsa was his enemy, and he invited the wrong person was invited, and he kicked him out. So he went to the Roman king and he massed. What's the expression in the Gemara? Ochil beikurze beimalke. Ochil, he ate. Beikurze beimalke. It doesn't say ozil. Ochil, he ate. So we have over here a strange thing. The Targum doesn't translate don't walk, it says don't eat. Leitechel kurzen beiamoch. And it's a very, very strange Targum. What does eating have to do with gossip? So RaShI says that Pashat people who are yentis gossip over food. Like Telech Kurtzen means do not be one of those people who walks around and shares information about other people. That the Lashon in RaShI is Shum Hal Oto. You drink, you eat, you imbibe, Kurtzen means Lashon HaRa. But the word kurtz is associated with food, with eating. Because Mesapre Lashon HaRa, people who went around and they gossiped, I guess that's the nature of gossip. You sit around, you eat food, you talk. Here the impression is that as the gossip is being delivered from person to person, there is some kind of event of eating as you're doing it. This is the Targum.
Does that add an isser?
Huh?
Would he add an isser about engaging in that?
I don't know. It's describing a scenario more than a law. The scenario is that people who are gossipists, people who peddle private information from one person to another person, when they enter, you give them food. RaShI says, "Legamar kiyam adavar." which can mean many things. It becomes believed because he eats food. He shares it because you give him food. Food plays a role. We know what food is in the human experience. Food is comfort, and it brings people closer together. So the scenario for the Lashon HaRa involves food, and the Targum adds that kvetch. Leitechel bekurtzen. The RaMbaN also was concerned with this Targum, and he gives a very unusual interpretation. Okay? He translates the word techel bekurtzen not as eating food. I don't know how he gets to this, but the RaMbaN translates techel bekurtzen bemalka to mean people who travel around. The RaMbaN also is concerned with this Lashon Targum like techel bekurtzen, and he gives a very different translation. The RaMbaN proposes, he brings what RaShI says, the RaMbaN proposes that there's a form of Lashon HaRa that you say without saying a word. There's a form of Lashon HaRa that you can communicate without saying a word. He doesn't translate like techel as food. He translates like techel as a voice without words. It's like a person is drawing attention without saying words, and the purpose for his drawing attention is to give information about somebody else. He says, Kol mashmiya kel, sheyedia chefze b'lei chituch miles. So he's tzayak lazim. He shouts out strange words. It's called yikritzu beineim. So he translates the word kurtzin as like as a grimace. You know, you want to make a funny face. You want to speak not with words. You want to speak with a facial expression, with a grimace or some other kind of a smirk, right? So the RaMbaN examines this Targum, who says ochel bei kurtzin. What does the word ochel mean? What does the word kurtzin mean? And he translates, this is the phenomenon of Lashon HaRa, that a person speaks without saying a single word, simply by making noise and giving some kind of a facial expression. There's an old Yiddish expression which is also very, very true. Yosef had two brothers named Shimon and Levi. And Shimon and Levi wanted to kill Yosef. So it says in Parshas Vayechi, Ki ba'apam hargu ish, with their anger they killed a man. So of course they didn't kill Yosef. Ki ba'apam hargu ish, with their anger they wanted to kill Yosef. They threw him into a pit, whatever the case was. They didn't kill him b'peil. So there's a Yiddish expression, Ki ba'apam hargu ish, mit akrimton mit anos kemen ahagen in a mensch. Sometimes you make a face like this, and you kill a man. Someone goes over to you and says, I heard there's a guy. You're looking for a job. I have a business. I have a position. You're looking for a job. What do you think of this guy? And all you say is, him? Finished. You just killed him. So you didn't say don't hire. You didn't say that, but you just intoned. You just trapped. You just grimaced in a way that discouraged that person from giving him the job on fartik. That's how the RaMbaN translates the word kurtzin, lashon kritze. You just give an indication of some sort which discourages somebody else from having a positive relationship with that person. That is also included in the lav of leitei lechrachel. Okay, so this is, how many things did we just learn? I gave you two Toras Kohanim. I gave you Gemara Pesachim. I gave you Eliyahu Rabba. I gave you a Midrash. I gave you RaShI. I gave you the Targum, and I gave you the RaMbaN. There's more, but that's enough. Now I want to get to the RaMbaM. The RaMbaM is in Hilchas Deis Perek Vav. It's the first 6 halachas, which is basically the halachas of Lashon HaRa. Okay? And I want to talk about halacha beis first. The RaMbaM says, Hoylech Rachel has 3 madregas. And if I understand it correctly, all 3 madregas are included in the same lav. It's a biblical prohibition. It's a negative commandment. You're not allowed to do the act of Rachel. Translation number 1, meragel. That means be a spy. Go into one house, meet one person, collect information, walk to the next house, and share it. Even if that information is completely innocuous. Even if that information is actually good. If I go into your house and I see that you have beautiful silver, and I go next door and say, Reuven Yosef is a very rich man, he has the nicest silver. What am I? I'm saying a nice thing. And maybe the guy next door is rich, he doesn't need to steal it from Reuven. but I'm passing information from one person to another, even if it's innocuous, it's benign gossip, it's lei telech rachel.
Praise other people?
Praising another person we'll get to in a moment, but this is not praise. This is just
Jealousy.
praising is maybe a good thing and maybe actually a lot, maybe a bad thing. According to the RaMbaN, it could be avak lashon hara. We'll get to it later on. Okay, but we're not talking about praising. We're simply talking about yenteing, sharing information from a person to a person. And I would say that to a great extent, when you say nice things about one person to another person, usually it doesn't necessarily get received so good unless that person likes that first person. So just the fact that you're gossiping, that you're passing along information about another person, is in the lav l'teilach l'rachel. That's number one. Number two, Lashon HaRa. What's Lashon HaRa? I go from person to a person, I give him information, one word, that's gnai, that's shameful. The first category in l'teilach l'rachel is I'm simply passing information from person to a person. I go into your house, I see how you live, I go next door, I tell to the next person, even if it's good, even if it's benign, it makes no difference. To go around and share information from one person to another person is included in the lav l'teilach l'rachel. Lashon HaRa is a worse aveda. Because Lashon HaRa, I'm going around sharing information one person to another with the express purpose of making the first person look bad. That's called Lashon HaRa, Lashon Gnai. So the second category, Lashon HaRa, in Seder Eliyahu is Lashon HaRa. Lashon HaRa means I get information in one house, I go to the next house and I share it to embarrass the first person. But Lashon HaRa has a caveat. It's the truth. It's not a lie. I go into your house, I see something which is shameful. I go into his house, I repeat it, that's the truth. I didn't say a lie. But I peddled knowledge from person to person, I peddled knowledge from person to person, which is a gnus, that's Lashon HaRa. And then there's a third category, which is the worst of all. And the third category is called the Meitzi Shem Ra. Meitzi Shem Ra is where I peddled information from one person to another, which is shameful, which isn't even true, which is sheker. I go into your house, I see what you do, and I go into his house, I don't say what I saw, I exaggerate, I say something different than I saw to be shameful. So when you read this RaMbaN, it says Hilchos Deis, Perek Vav Halacha Beis, all of these three things are in this one lav l'teilach l'rachel. Number one, just gossiping, passing information from a person to a person, even it's benign, is included in the lav. Number two, if it's the truth, but it's gnai, it's gnus, it's shameful, it's worse. And number three, where it's meitzi shem ra, it's shameful and it's not even the truth, which is the worst category of leisei l'rachel. Yes, go ahead.
The Lashon HaRa, you got Toras. What do you get from meitzi shem ra? Is it worse?
All three are included in leisei l'rachel. Rechilus is all three categories, and Lashon HaRa is Rechilus. If you ever read the last halacha in RaMbaN Hilchos Taras, you see how the RaMbaN describes it. First, he just a yente. He shows you how you degenerate from talking about people to speaking about the Nevi'im, to speaking about the Eibishter. It's a whole process, and it just begins with talking about people.
About your wife.
Over there, it's even misa. If you're saying the truth, she gets skila. You want to kill her. That's not stamazei. She's a psula. She's an arusa. She's your betrothed. Okay, go ahead.
In the last case, where the person, is it the person lies about what he saw the other person do, or he exaggerates it?
Where's the line between exaggeration and a lie?
A complete liar is just an exaggeration.
It says sheker. It says the lashon in the RaMbaN is sheker, which is a lie. But there are exaggerations which are a bold-faced lie also.
Like a small exaggeration, like an exaggeration.
Right. Correct. You know what the punishment for Hilchos Rachel is? You know what the punishment for Mesach Lashon HaRa is? You know what the punishment for Meitzi Shem Ra is? You know what the answer is? Yeah. Nothing. You mentioned Tzaras. This is already a skula. Ein leiken alav. There's no malchus. You don't get punished for being Hilchos Rachel. You know why? That the Tzaras comes from God. We're talking about Sanhedrin, Bezdin. Why? Because it's a lav she'ein b'maisa. He didn't do anything. Words. The halach is lav she'ein b'maisa, a negative commandment where there's no action involved, there's no malchus. That's the din. So the RaMbaN says you should know these avedas ain't like it. There's no punishment in dinim of the Sanhedrin. But then in the same sentence he says Goyim lareg nefoshes rabis misal. There's no punishment for it, and it can kill many Jews. And he gives the example of Doeg Ademi. There was a man named Doeg. The Mishnah says about Doeg, Doeg was a god. Doeg was one of the greatest geniuses in the times of David HaMelech. It's a very, very big lam, a very big Talmud Chacham. But Doeg was a Balmidas Reis. Doeg was a very ugly person of Ben Adam Lachavere. He was a patster. He was a troublemaker. He liked to create agitation. So Shaul HaMelech was chasing after David. Shaul HaMelech was chasing after David. And David went to a city called Noiv, which is a city of 85 Kayanim. And they had no idea. Remember, this is a time there was no communication. There was no telegraph, there was no telephone, there was no email. They didn't know, they had no idea that Shaul HaMelech wanted to kill David. So they see David HaMelech come. David HaMelech was the prince, he was the son-in-law of Shaul HaMelech. Everyone spoke about how David HaMelech had killed Goliath and so on and so forth. So they greeted him with the greatest covet. They gave him food, they gave him shelter, they gave him protection. And the worst of all, they gave him a weapon. They gave him a sword. And nothing would have happened. Doeg came to Shaul, and he told Shaul that the people of Noiv gave David HaMelech respite, they gave David HaMelech protection, and they gave David HaMelech a weapon. Shaul killed the entire city. He killed 85 Kayanim, and I think 7 members of the Gevoinim, 7 members of the Nesinim, the Gevoinim, and 85 Kayanim, because of Doeg's Lashon HaRa. What was Doeg's Einish? Nothing. Why? Words. So the RaMbaM says in the same sentence, Ein leichen alav, there's no malchus for this Aveda, but this Aveda kills. Now that's not the end of the story. You know the end of the story? The end of the story is that the Nesinim were not Meichel. They killed 7 Nesinim, 7 members of the Nesinim. Nesinim are Gevoinim. They were Gadim. And there was a plague, there was a Magefa. Yidden started to die. Years later, many Yidden died. And David asked why this, I think he asked one of Atumim, why this plague was happening. And he answered, Al Shol v'al Beis Hadomim. Al Shol shlo nisbet k'halacha v'al Beis Hadomim al Nevi Rakayinim. So David came to the Gevoinim and he said to the Gevoinim, forgive the Jewish people for killing 7 of your brethren. And the Gevoinim said, sure, we'll forgive him. Give us 7 of Shaul's family children and family members, and we'll kill them, and then it'll be even. And David HaMelech told the Gevoinim, come on, what's that going to accomplish? A Yid is one of the Midas, Shloisha Midas, Ufya Shal Mezu, Rachmanim, Baishanim, Gein Lechasadim, forgive. And the Gevoinim refused, the Nesinim refused. And people were dying. So David made a goydel, and he took 7 members of Shaul HaMelech's family, and he killed them. And the Magefa stopped. And that's when David HaMelech was geyser that the Nesinim Asurim Lavi Bakol. That this segment of Gadim are not allowed to marry Jews, not only they're not allowed to marry Kohanim, not allowed to marry the Levim and Yisraelim, because they don't have Yiddish Midas.
Who are these people?
The Gevoinim, they were the ones who tricked Yeshua. They put on clothing and like as if they came from a great distance. And they made a krisis bit with the Yidden, a peace treaty, and they were living in Eretz Yisrael. They were Canaanim, and Yeshua made them to work in the Beis HaMikdash. They used to chop wood, they used to draw water. But the point is that the RaMbaM brings, the Gemara says this, that they didn't have Midas Yehudiyas, they didn't have Jewish Midas, because a Yid is Moichel. And it wasn't the next day, it was years later. David HaMelech said to them, forgive, Yidden are dying because your ancestors, your brothers were killed by Shaul HaMelech, who was already long dead himself. Zay Moichel said, we'll forgive, no problem. You know, like the Italians. Vendetta. A life for a life. And David had no choice. Because Yidden, he made a goydel. There's a whole thing in the Gemarah, if he included maybe Baishas, didn't include maybe Baishas. And he killed 7 members of David and Shaul's family, and the Magefa stopped, and David HaMelech said, that the Nesinim Asurim Lavi Bakol, because they don't have Rachmanis. So the RaMbaM says, there is no punishment for Lashon HaRa, but it can bring so much death. Right? The Gemarah in Masechta Gittin, Akamtza, Ubar Kamtza, Chariv Yerushalayim, because of Lashon HaRa, the entire city of Yerushalayim was destroyed, the Beis Mikdash was destroyed, and tens of thousands of Yidden were killed because of Lashon HaRa. There's a lot of details in this RaMbaM that I want to share with you that are pushed. Yesoidis de Kezachem. You know, Lubavitchers are not into Lashon HaRa, which means we think, You're allowed, as long as you have a beard, you're allowed to speak Lashon HaRa. It's not them a clean shaven, but they don't speak Lashon HaRa. Lashon HaRa, besides for the fact it's a terrible Aveda, it is a shameful way of life. People who walk around talking about people are fair. They're lowly people. To spend your days and nights talking about other human beings reflects on you in a very, very, very diminished way. So here's a couple of RaMbaMs for you that'll blow your mind. It's all based on Gemarahs, obviously. Number one, the three worst Avedas in the Torah are Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shvichas Damim, right? Murder, adultery, and idolatry. Says the RaMbaM says that Lashon HaRa is equal to Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, and Shvichas Damim. In fact, I believe the Lashon is Vita LaKadosh Baruch Hu Avodah Avodah Zarah, Shvichas Damim, V'loi Vita Avodah Lashon HaRa. Lashon HaRa is equal to or worse than idolatry, adultery, and murder. The Gemarah says that RaMbaM brings a halacha that Lashon HaRa, talking about other people and saying the truth, is equal to Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, Shvichas Damim. And then it says even more. A mesapet Lashon HaRa harei hu koifen be'iker. Carrying information about one person to another person. Where this information is shameful for the first person, even if it's true, means you don't believe in God. Koifen be'iker, zeh steht in RaMbaM. And then finally, the most famous quote that's mentioned even in Hayem, the Gemarah says it, that Lashon HaRa katla tilta. Lashon HaRa murders three. The Mesaper, the one who says it, the Shemeya, the one who hears it, and the one who it's about. And then the Gemarah says, Vel HaMakabla Yeser. The person Lashon HaRa affects the worst is the one, not the one who says it, not the one who it's about, but the one who listens to it. And then the Rambam brings Nochazach. This is fascinating. There is something called Avak Lashon HaRa, which means Lashon HaRa Midrabanan. It's called the dust of Lashon HaRa. It's not Mamish Lashon HaRa, but the effect is the same as Lashon HaRa. I want to read you these 5 things. Okay? Number 1, if you go over to another person and you tell him, you see that guy, I wish he would always be the way he is right now. You go over to Yossi and say about Yitzchak. You know, I wish Yitzchak would be for the rest of his life like he is right now. Now, is that a crime? But I do. I may have even said something nice. That's called Avak Lashon HaRa. I wish that person will always be like he is right now was the first category in Lashon HaRa. Category number 2. You say, you know Yitzchak. I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you about Yitzchak. I'm not going to say a word. You don't, does this Lashon HaRa by omission. You say, Moshe, Shmerel, Chaim, Baruch. You know Moshe? Oh, I'm not saying anything. Ich schweig, I'm not saying a word. That's category number 2. It's called Avak Lashon HaRa. Number 3, and this is the one that you asked me about. If you go over to a person that doesn't like Yitzchak, and you say, you know, Yitzchak is so smart. Yitzchak is so kind. That's Lashon HaRa. If you say, you asked me before, Shalom Beh, before you walked out, what is wrong with saying a nice thing about another person? When you say a nice thing about another person, oftentimes the person who hears it is hurt by it, and it makes him hate that other person. You're not allowed to say a nice thing about another person unless you know the person who hears it is going to be happy to hear it. Because if you say a flattering thing about Moshe to Chaim, and it's going to make Chaim be jealous of Moshe, you're over on Avak Lashon HaRa. Number 4, sometimes you say Lashon HaRa as a joke. You know, Chaim, what can I tell you about Chaim? He's whatever. He's always whatever. Whenever he eats, he makes his shirt dirty. You make a joke. You're not taking it seriously. You try to give the impression that it's meaningless, but there's Lashon HaRa b'derech schoik. Lashon HaRa, which is set in the tone of a laughter, of a joke, is not Lashon HaRa menaraisis. Lashon HaRa is called Avak Lashon HaRa. And the last is when you say Lashon HaRa duplicitously. You speak about another person, and you say things very innocently, like, you know, I heard, Moshe makes a lot of money. Moshe makes a lot of money. I don't know where he gives his stuff, but he makes a lot of money. And what you're doing is you're telling other people Moshe is rich, he doesn't give tzedakah. Either you want that you should go and ask him for tzedakah, or you want to expose that he doesn't give enough tzedakah. And you say it with a Temimim. You say it like you don't even mean anything. Those are 5 categories that RaMbaM lists. Each one of them is based on Gemarahs of Lashon HaRa, which is derech Ramos. Okay? Two more things about the next thing the RaMbaM says is, this is interesting. The halacha of Lashon HaRa is only true if it's not known already. If 3 people know it, meaning to say, if you say to 3 people at once, or if you say to one person, the second person, and the third person, the moment it's heard by the third person, it's no longer Lashon HaRa. It's still Rechilus. But Lashon HaRa is only when you are the one who are the source of the gnus. Nobody else knows this embarrassing thing about this particular person. You are the first person to deliver it to person A and to person B. It's Lashon HaRa until the third person hears it. That doesn't mean that if 3 people knows it becomes a mitzvah to say it. It's still like Telech Rachel. It's still gossip. It's still Rechilus. But Lashon HaRa is only for the first couple of people. Now I'm going to let you guys ask you a question, but I need to finish this. What does the RaMbaM say to you about people who are Besapel Lashon HaRa? What does the RaMbaM say to you if you have a friend or a neighbor who has a habit of talking about other people, especially if he has a habit of talking about other people in ways which embarrass them? Number 1, you're not allowed to live in their neighborhood. Oh, yeah. Number 2, you're not allowed to sit with them at the same table. You come to a wedding, you come to a shul, and there's a famous yente, go to a different table. Number 3, you're not allowed to listen to them. When a Mesapel Lashon HaRa begins his peddling of information, you get up and you walk away. And number 4, the RaMbaM says, Leinech ta'amdin Yisrael b'midbar el al avei Lashon HaRa. Yidden did many avedas, including avei zara, including shvichas domim. The judgment of the Jews in the desert was sealed, that they should not go into Eretz Yisrael, because they spoke Lashon HaRa about Eretz Yisrael. Go ahead, Shmuel.
You said that, when someone comes close to your table, you're supposed to move away if they're going to say Lashon HaRa. What if you know that everything they say is the type of Lashon HaRa that 3 people already know?
So halachically, mistame, it's mutir. But morally, mistame, you want to have different friends. You want to have different friends. In my life, I know for myself, if I said to you, I never spoke Lashon HaRa, I'd be the biggest liar. When I was younger, I enjoyed talking about people. When this guy was still a bocher, or a shliach, we had a fabrengen in his house, and he blew this bomb on us. He said, great people discuss ideas, average people discuss things, low people discuss people. I remember my friend's reaction. It was so simple and so stunning. It was like, wow. It had an impact on me. I said, I talk about people. Talking about people is fair. Even if it's not Lashon, just people who talk about people are like people who don't take showers. You don't want to be around such people. And you want to cleanse yourself from such a midah. You want to discuss ideas. You guys talk about cars. Talk about cars. Don't talk about people. Go ahead. You want to say something? You want to say something?
Does Lashon HaRa, does it refer to all people or Jews just Jews in particular?
I would imagine that the halachas of Lashon HaRa are negeh to Yidden, but the spirit of Lashon HaRa is negeh. The idea that the RaMbaM says that Lashon HaRa can kill many people. If you speak Lashon HaRa and a bunch of goyim are killed, you're not a good person. So whether the din applies, in other words, there's no malchus, there's no einish. But lamaila, are you going to get tzaras? I spoke Lashon HaRa about a goy. This is bechlal tzaras only comes on very great human beings. Let me flip it the question the other way. Is Lashon HaRa mutter for a goy? Goyim have sheva mitzvahs b'neich. Lashon HaRa is not one of them. So Lashon HaRa mutter for us for a goy. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. But there are a lot of things which are, what you say is, it's not osur b'prat, but it's osur b'klal. Meaning, this particular action is not a separate sin, but it's part of being a mensch. And in as much as it's part of being a mensch, it's not just about Yidden. You understand? Anybody else have any questions? That was a good class. And I'm also humble.